we try to do right by everybody in every situation. We try to give, our team freedom and flexibility, and we value our team for the skill sets they have and just the unique perspective that they bring to the table. So, the way we kind of approach culture is it's pretty straightforward, but it's doing the right thing by our clients. It's doing right by each other on the team, and it's really having fun at work. I mean, that's sadly, I think, one of those things that has kind of fallen by the wayside as competition ramps up, and like you mentioned with AI, things are moving faster and people are offering more services. There's kind of this race to the top that we don't really subscribe to. Like I mentioned, everything that we do is pretty custom. So we like to forge kind of deep relationships with our clients, and then deep relationships with them amongst our team. And that's kind of our core that I think our clients notice, and I think our team notice. It's a little bit different than what other folks are doing out there.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to talk about scaling culture. Your culture changes over time. What worked with 10 employees doesn't work at 25. When you have 50 employees, it shifts again. When you have 100 employees, it's continuously shifting. How do you lead and navigate through those challenges? Well, today we have the CEO of Kalon Creative, Brett Turner. Kalon Creative is a apps website development company based in Georgia. They work with a lot of sort of mid-sized companies that are growing and scaling with their tools and solutions. Brett and I talk about the culture behind their success. Scaling culture is something he's gone through a number of times as his company's gotten bigger, and he just shares back some of the insights and some of the inflection points that he's had to go through in the journey of scaling culture at Kalon Creative. My name is Gene Hammett. I am an executive coach, primarily focused on CEO coaching. I've done a little bit of executive coaching with my partner companies, and we also have manager coaches inside the staff of our organization. All of this in service of helping companies continue to grow, meet that next big opportunity. I only work with fast growth companies, and so if that's you and you're curious about what is on the horizon, maybe you're feeling some feedback from the market or with your cultural leadership that isn't quite sitting well with you, let's get on a call. I'll use some of my patented tools that are proven to accelerate your understanding of where you are and allow you to prioritize how to move forward. We will identify even some leadership blind spots, because that's really the key to growth, is realizing what's getting in the way, and it may be not known to you. It's called a blind spot. So send me an email if you're curious, gene@genehammett.com. We will dive into your business. We will really figure out what's going on. We will use my tools, and I promise not to sell you. If you're curious about this and you want to lean in and you're listening to this, send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Just say you heard me on the podcast and let's talk. It's that easy. Now here's the interview with Brett. Brett, how are you?
Doing well, Gene. How are you?
I'm excited to have this conversation. We are going to dive into culture that's made you guys successful. Before we do that, let's talk about your company, Kalon Creative. What are you guys up to over there?
Right, sure. Yeah. So I'm the CEO of Kalon Creative. We've been in business for about 12 years. We build web and mobile apps, primarily geared around helping businesses that are that kind of mid-market level. Sometimes they're about to hit kind of an inflection point to start scaling. So they may be 10 million in revenue. It's kind of the where we find our sweet spot, 10 to kind of 50 million in revenue, but obviously work beyond that as well. But really we're working with teams that are trying to improve things on the operational side of their businesses. So, as you scale a business, the tools that you use that work for so long start to break down. You've got data that's living in a million different places, and really you don't get the same insights you used to, or, you've got new processes you're trying to put in place. So we come in and we build really custom web and mobile apps that help people remove bottlenecks, increase efficiency. It helps them scale. So really it's a pretty bespoke agency that comes in and solves unique problems. So we're not, coming in and doing a rinse and repeat and just building the same thing over and over again. We really are tailored to, businesses' unique challenges. So a lot of what we do is really a lot of work on the front end to, from the strategy standpoint, really diving in, understanding businesses, understanding the challenges, talking with the team that's on the ground, working in the day-to-day, not always best circumstances. And really we build whatever they need to help them get back on track.
I know a lot of marketing companies are embracing AI in different ways. A lot of it's operational excellence, some of it's, customer facing with solutions. Where are you guys in this journey of embracing AI?
Right. Yeah. From the AI side of things, I mean, there's one hand that, you look and you see something new every single day that comes out, right? It's a new software development tool or something like that, right? That we could initially look at and say, oh, that's a threat to us. But, from the internal perspective, we're actually trying to utilize AI to help us build things, a little bit faster, but where we can actually spend more time on the strategy side of things, spend more time with clients. And then from our client perspective, a lot of where we see just the benefit of AI right now is taking massive amounts of data and gathering unique insights from that. So what would traditionally take, a data analyst or someone, on the data side of things, days or weeks to go through a lot of complex data to gather insights that maybe aren't even necessarily the right insights. We see AI really coming in and surfacing relevant information to the right people at the right time, based on past performance, and kind of highlighting, hey, you might want to take a look at this because, based on all this information, we're seeing some patterns that, have traditionally, led to a failure of something in the past, right? So I think it's a fascinating new technology that, I don't even think we can really start to wrap our minds around everything that it's going to do in the next 3 to 5 years.
So today we're going to talk about scaling culture. I love to talk marketing, strategy, and technology. Love it, love it, love it. But I'm also really curious about the kind of people and leadership and culture that has made your company where it is today. What do you feel like is the core essence of your culture that makes you guys successful?
I think for us, and it's kind of strange to think that it's kind of, an uncommon thing, but I do hear it a lot. Is just, we try to do right by everybody, in every situation. We try to give, our team freedom and flexibility, and we value our team for the skill sets they have and just the unique perspective that they bring to the table. So, the way we kind of approach culture is it's pretty straightforward, but it's doing the right thing by our clients. It's doing right by each other on the team, and it's really having fun at work. I mean, that's sadly, I think, one of those things that has kind of fallen by the wayside as competition ramps up, and like you mentioned with AI, things are moving faster and people are offering more services. There's kind of this race to the top that we don't really subscribe to. Like I mentioned, everything that we do is pretty custom. So we like to forge kind of deep relationships with our clients, and then deep relationships with them amongst our team. And that's kind of our core that I think our clients notice, and I think our team notice. That's a little bit different than what other folks are doing out there.
Is there anything that you do to measure culture? Like you doing surveys or are you doing some other things that allow you to determine where your culture is going?
Yeah, we haven't. We've talked around, implementing some surveys and things like that. You know, but when you're sending out surveys to your team, especially a team like ours that's not very big, you can make them anonymous, but even with our team, so our team, to kind of give you a breakdown, we have about 25 team members, 80% of which are in Europe. And then even within that 80%, right, there's different language, proficiencies. Everybody's fluent in English, but, you can maybe pick out some different things of like, oh, the way that's written, I could tell that's probably someone from, Sweden, or that may be someone from Croatia. So even in anonymized surveys, right, I think are one of those things where people may not be fully honest. So what we do, we really try to connect with our team often and really be open, kind of an open door where, it's not frowned upon to come with an issue that even people have with us, something that we've done. And then we try to pass that along. We have team leads that are leading teams of developers or teams of designers. And we try to, pass along how we like to communicate with our team to them so that they can be open doors as well. So really, we try as much as we can to promote open communication, express open frustrations if you have those, and not come down on somebody for doing that. And the more you can do that, I think it's just a lot of trust and a lot of freedom and flexibility to kind of express the way you feel about something. It's not a top down, this is how you all have to act, and if you don't act this way, there's going to be problems, right? It's very much a relationship driven type of approach.
Now, Brett's been talking about culture. Let me share with you the key tools I see that drives culture. One of those is mission and the other one's vision and values. We've heard these everywhere, but if you don't have these tools readily available to you, mission is the right that you want to, or the wrong you want to correct in the world. The vision is what it will look like once you get there. And this is not just a one statement. You want to make sure this is fully clear and everyone knows how they fit into it. And then you want to have values. Culture runs on these three things, and these are the three biggest levers, if you will. Having the ability to hire people who fit the values of the company, that culture fit that everyone talks about, so important. All of those things start with the right mission, vision, and values. Those are all systems that you can use and leverage as you continue to grow your company. Now back to the conversation with Brett. We're talking about scaling culture with Brett, and I just wanted to make sure that you were able to highlight what the kind of culture you wanted to build. So we all have a vision for what culture was supposed to be like before we started actually working and hiring people. When you had that vision, was it clear to you, or did it have to evolve as you kind of got feedback from the market?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, when we started the company 12 years ago, it was just my business partner, Austin, and I. And we had known we went to high school together. So it's not like we had to start on day one and say, hey, this is the culture we're building here with just the two of us, between the two of us. We just already had a natural relationship formed. And we're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different. I can be more of an outgoing, outspoken, kind of bigger personality in some ways, and Austin's a little more reserved. And I think that kind of but he's also, I mean, he's amazing. He's very intentional. He's an incredibly hard worker. I'm a hard worker, but I like to incorporate a lot of fun into what we do. So I think that combination, as we grew, it kind of took on a life of its own. And it wasn't something we set out to intentionally create, but as we brought in team members, we naturally we tried to bring in team members that had the same types of qualities. So, while it wasn't, for the first 5 to 7 people that came on board, an intentional thing, I think we started to see, as we're hiring different people, right? It's like, oh, that person doesn't really fit with us. One of the metrics we try to use is how would it feel to sit in a car ride, a road trip with this person for 6 hours, right? And they can control the radio, and they, is that somebody that you would want to ride with? And I think that kind of metric, along with just some questions during the hiring process, right? We are intentional about bringing in people that care for one another, bringing in people that bring their own thoughts and insights and aren't just looking to us for direction. We want really to build a team of leaders, within the company as well. But as I mentioned, it's one where we're pretty flexible. We care about the work we do, but we also care about our lives outside of work. So, it's not a working 70 to 80 hours a week type of culture. We feel like there's a lot of value that we bring to the world outside of what we do at Kalon as well. And that's something that we try to promote as much as we can, and allow our team to get recharged, get refreshed, so that they can come to work with a clear mind and be happy to be here, have a good time while they're here. And that kind of flows out to our clients. And I feel like they can see the value in that as well.
I wanted to highlight something. I really appreciate you putting together the document. I don't know if it was over the weekend, but I received it this morning, where you were preparing for today's interview. You took this very seriously. So hopefully everyone is seeing the sharpness of this. But you said something in there that I wanted to pull out and ask you a question. There's a big
Sure.
difference between following a leader and following in line behind a leader. What did you mean by that?
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I look at that, and from a leadership standpoint, a follower, it's an interesting term, right? Because it's been, overused probably on social media. You see that, how many followers do you have? A lot of that. The way I view someone who's following a leader, right, is they are there because they're looking to gain some insights from a person that is leading them. They're looking to learn from experience that's already been had, right? So maybe they don't make the same mistake that a leader had, because a good leader is going to share that experience. They're looking to your skill set and how you've done things, so that they can pick up and basically, ideally, I think, create something better with your leadership than they would have been able to create on their own. But they're not looking, from the other side of the coin, like you mentioned, someone who's just falling in line. And these are the types of, team members that we don't really look for, as someone who's, really just looking for directives. They're looking for orders. They're just looking to get a job done. They're not really there to absorb or learn anything from the person who's leading the team. And I think there are plenty of companies like that, right? Where it's just almost like an assembly line type of approach, right? Where it's like, I do this one task and I do it in a mediocre way, and that's all I'm here to do. And then I go home at the end of the day. I think a follower is someone who eventually becomes a leader themselves as well. And that's the type of team member and the type of culture we're looking to build. And a follower as well can speak up and say, "Hey, I disagree with that." And that's totally fine. And that's what we encourage as well, because, times change, right? And things, our experience was in a different time sometimes. And we want to be open to shifting our thought process as well.
Well, thanks for unpacking that for us. I want to shift gears here because we've been talking about scaling culture and sort of the cultural elements of your company. But I want to talk about leadership for a second. I know that we all have some natural leadership capabilities. You've got them early in life through basketball and through other areas. You learn from these people around you, but then you get into business, and usually it's a little bit different. You've also invested in coaching. Talk to me a little bit about your own evolution as a leader.
Right. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I mean, I think starting with just two of us and slowly growing the team over the first really 8 years of our business. The biggest our team got was probably 10 people, and I was still involved pretty heavily at that point in doing design work and strategy and almost project managing some projects. So it was one of those wearing many hats types of situations, right? And when you're doing that, you don't really feel like you're necessarily leading anything. You're kind of just jumping from place to place. But about 5 years ago, my business partner actually started working with a coach, and he recommended, forming a leadership team. And at that point, we said, okay, if we're doing a leadership team, we kind of need separate roles. And that's when I became CEO of Kalon. And that was at the recommendation of my business partner, right? So I said, sure, yeah, I'll take that on. I don't necessarily know what a CEO does on a day to day basis. And but it's something I'll give a shot. And I think that was kind of a turning point for me in almost freeing me up to really start to attack sort of my vision for Kalon and where we could go. And we started that's kind of when our growth point started happening, because we did define roles, and I think it allowed us to really kind of separate those, and growth became something that I was striving for at that point. But I'd say probably 2 or 3 years into that, I learned that, really growth was kind of not super fulfilling or super sustaining. And it wasn't clear of, hey, what do we do next here? So I actually started working with a business coach as well. And that was a huge turning point for me of how I looked at, my role. And it kind of was stepping back out of the day to day side of things, and really being okay with, the things that I'm striving for aren't going to show themselves for months or even years. Because I think that transition from, I'm in projects every day to, okay, now I'm at 50,000 feet. There's kind of an emptiness that's left there for you when you're not getting to, see smiles on the client's faces when you're presenting designs and things like that. So it really was an evolution for me of, that's okay. It took around 3 or 4 years for those efforts that I was now working on to start to pay off, and then as our team grew, I kind of felt more purpose in this culture side of things, and implementing different ways that we can make the team have more connection or enjoy the work they're doing, or shouting out team members, and really building that side of the business, along with sort of the long-term growth and the long-term vision of things.
Brett's been talking about investing in a coach. I just wanted to kind of give you my 2 cents here. I've had coaches since 2002, on and off, many different types of coaches, some for speaking, some for writing, some for marketing, some for sales, some for just business growth, some for other things. And it really is important to understand how to drive growth. And I needed an outside perspective behind that. And so I share this with you today because it is such an important piece and tool to have a coach in your corner. And if you have any questions about that, reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. I'm not trying to sell you, but if you want to explore what coaching looks like, or just to figure out what's getting in your way, let's talk. Gene@genehammett.com. Back to Brett. Coaching for me has been profound, my own transformation. I've had a coach on and off for over 23 years. If I go back and think about it. I've also addressed some blind spots. And again, this is a bold question. You may not want to answer this, and you can tell me no, not a part of your today's conversation. But
I'm an open book.
Is there a blind spot that you discovered through having this coach that you've been working with for a while that has allowed you to create the kind of success in the business that you have today that you could share with us?
I think maybe one of the areas that early on that I feel like as we were scaling, like I said, I maybe was more focused on the growth and the business aspect and the revenue and how are we going to get new clients. And I think the blind spot at that point was the culture aspect of that. And I just assumed that as we scaled, that the culture was naturally going to scale with us, right? Like it's one of those things. We've been doing these things at 10 people, so it should work at 25 people. But that it took me a little bit to prove that that was not the case. We're jumping on Zoom calls and it's 10 people and everybody's off mute, and we're all talking, we're catching up, and we're hanging out. When you scale it up to 25 people and you jump on Zoom and you've got 50 eyeballs staring at you and you see, I say that mute button is contagious, right? It's one person turns it on, then everybody turns it on, and then the cameras start to go off, and you're just left there in an empty room, essentially, with with a bunch of people that they're kind of just looking to you to talk the entire time. So that was one of those aspects where I said, okay, we're going to have to do some things differently. And that was the coach that helped me realize that, hey, if you're really trying to promote team connection, you need to look at your team in a different way and how you're engaging with your team in a different way. So we started breaking out into smaller groups. Maybe we do a Zoom call where I'm spending the first 5 or 10 minutes kind of providing some updates on new clients we got in, and kind of some vision updates and things like that for the team. But then we break out into smaller teams so that people can still feel connection with one another, because sitting on an hour Zoom call listening to me talk is not, it's not going to provide connection. It's just going to be probably a boring hour for most of the team.
I appreciate you doing that. I know it's a bold question. It wasn't in your prepackaged thing of me asking your blind spots, but wrapping up today, we talk about scaling cultures. Is there anything that I have left out of the questions that you wanted to highlight as an answer to how do you scale culture as you grow your company?
Yeah, I think the main thing, the temptation for a company that's growing fast, you've got clients that are beating down your door and they want things done as soon as possible. And there's a temptation to go out and just hire quickly to fill a need. And that's a mistake. I think if you're not incorporating culture as part of your hiring process and specific culture questions that, they're not trick questions or anything like that, but they lay out scenarios where you can get a good sense of who someone is. I think that's key, because one of the things that, in my mind, every hire that you make is an intentional vote for a shift in your culture. If you're bringing in somebody who's rude or disrespectful to your team, that's a sign to your team of, hey, this is okay. We accept this now. And that's not the case, right? If that's not part of your culture, you have to be very intentional about even hiring for a culture fit over a skill set fit. I've heard you ask that question before on previous podcasts of, would you rather, what's more important, your team or clients, right? So to me, I think that's been key for us, is kind of slowing down during the interview process and really thinking about, okay, how is this person going to impact the team? And what are we signaling to our team by bringing this person in? So I think, to me, that's kind of a key as we've grown, is bringing in the right people who really align with the culture over, a developer that can write great code, because there's a lot of those.
I'm glad you brought that up. I forget how many times I've asked that question about what's more important, your employees or your customers, and 93% say it's employees, because we're doing business with them every day. And I really believe that we're as leaders, we're there to take care of them and grow them into the leaders that we want them to be, which is a lot of the stuff you've talked about. So Brett, I really appreciate your wisdom today on today's podcast.
Thanks so much, Gene.
Wow, another great interview here on the podcast. Love doing what we're doing, talking about scaling culture, all these, the insights behind this, really helpful for you. I'm happy to share content like this with you. So keep tuning in. And if there's any way we can help you, send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.